everyone, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make music like Denis Sulta. So a bunch of you requested this one, and I really like his music, so I figured, what better time than now. And yeah, as usual, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description. And yeah, let's dive in. So the first sound I have here is this lead, which sounds like this. So as far as the notes go, it's just playing this kind of like jumpy little pattern that just follows with the bass line. These are the kind of synths that Denis Sulta tends to have. Like, he has these like very jumpy, kind of like sporadic synth lines, and it's cool. But this is how you program them. Like, you just want to sort of write in these notes, like sort of. What I like to do is find notes that are in the key of your track. So in this case, we are in actually G sharp major. And so you just kind of find notes that are in the key of your track that would sound good together, and then just sort of play with it as if they were drums. So like what I mean by this is like if you look at here, I kind of made a very rhythmic pattern. Like I sort of approach this as if I was writing like a percussion or something like that. But that is how I recommend writing these kind of like really sporadic synth lines. And then as far as the sound goes, it's pretty straightforward. It's a saw wave with a little bit of white noise and analog, going into a low-pass filter with a bit of an envelope on it. The envelope is shaped like this, so it's kind of like, opening up, and it's got that little bit of attack. And then that's going into this amplitude envelope, which is just set like that. And then I have a little bit of vibrato just to give it some movement and some kind of like, just like that sort of analog feel. And then I have that going into a saturator, which is really just beefing it up. I played around with the analog clip a little bit, but it's really just sort of, like I said, like just pulling that up and giving it some warmth. And then I have a little bit of ping pong delay, and then a bit of reverb as well. So the ping pong delay is just doing some 16th notes, and the reverb is just giving it, a bit of atmosphere. It's pretty straightforward. Like I said, with this sound, it's like a lot of these kind of synth sounds that you hear in Denis Sulta's tracks are actually pretty straightforward. Like they're mostly just saw and square and sine and triangle waves and all the kind of like straightforward sounds that you hear. It's just a little bit of interesting filter work and a little bit of interesting work with the effects, as well as, like I said, just the sort of really cool MIDI programming that he's known for. So then the next thing we have here is this bass, which sounds like this. And so this is actually a very simple bass sound. All it is it's just a square wave in analog going into a low-pass filter with no envelope, and then I have the amplitude set like this, so the amplitude envelope set like this, so you can see it's just kind of like a brick, like it's just, you hit the note and it plays, and then when you let go it stops. So this is really a simple bass sound, and you may be wondering, like, if you want to just make such a simple subby kind of bass sound, why not just use a sine wave or a triangle wave? And the reason why I did it this way is because with any kind of, waveform besides the sine wave, obviously, you get what's called harmonics. So with the sine wave, you have your fundamental harmonic, and then that's it. And then with like other waves, you get the fundamental, and then all the ones on top of that. And so what happens is it makes for a much more rich and more interesting sound. Now, obviously, that wouldn't really work for the bass of this, but if we use a low-pass filter, what's going to happen is we can filter out a lot of those high frequencies, but they're not, or those high harmonics, but they're not completely going to be taken out. Like, there's still going to be a little bit left over, and that is what we want. Because it gives us more of like a bass that you can hear. Like, if it was just a sine wave, you really just feel that. But this gives you something that you can hear. So, like, if you're listening to this on, like, a phone speaker or something, like, if you're listening to this right now on, like, your iPhone or something, then, yeah, you can probably hear the bass. And that's why, because we're letting through some higher harmonics. So then the next thing we have here is this little drum bus. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of go through the individual layers, and then I'm going to explain, like, the processing that I did overall on the drums. So the first set of drums we have here are these hi-hats, which sound like this. And so what I did here was I have these two hi-hats, this closed one and this open one, and I put them in a drum rack together and just sort of programmed them like this, like these sort of just open hi-hat pattern, I guess. And then, yeah, it's pretty straightforward with the processing. With these, the main thing I was trying to get was I was trying to really nail that sort of like metallic kind of hi-hat sound like you hear in a lot of Denis' tracks, and I think I pretty much got it because I know what's going on that causes that. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, in a lot of his tracks, he has like these very sort of like bright metallic kind of hi-hats, and they sound like this. Like these are just drum machine hi-hats from like a 909. They're not any kind of special thing. I didn't like synthesize them or anything like that, but they have like a little bit of a different sound because I'm doing things to, like I said, make them sound kind of more metallic. So I did a bit of stuff like the stuff that I'm going to show you on the drum bus here. This group is doing a lot of it as well. But the number one way that I did this was using a chorus. So chorus can be really cool if you want to get this kind of, like I said, like metallic hi-hat sound. That isn't just in Denis Sulta's tracks, by the way. I recommend using some chorus on your hi-hats because it gives them, like, the way that it modulates the sound kind of lends itself to this, like, metallic type of sound when you put stuff like hi-hats to it. Like, if you put a pad through chorus, obviously it's going to sound really smooth or like a bass or something like that. But with these sharper kind of hi-hats, like I said, it just gives them that metallic feel. So then after that, I just cut out some low end. Just wanted to clean them up. And yeah, so the next thing I have here is this kick. It's pretty straightforward. I just have a nice kick that just kind of works with the bass. And yeah, I mean, the only key thing I will say here is like when you're trying to get that type of vibe, what I noticed with Denis Sulta's tracks is that they don't have, like his kicks don't have a lot of like strong transients. Like a lot of times it's kind of softer like this. And yeah, so the next thing I have here is this little tom sound, which I'm going to play with the kick so you can hear the groove. It sounds like this. So the way I made this was I took this sample, and all I did was I just pitched it down in here. I feel like it made it kind of deeper sounding, and it just made it sound like it had like that low end kind of groove that I want. Like, this is really meant to work with the kick so that the drums, like all together, will have more groove. And it tends to be more effective when it's lower. Like if I pitch this up, it's not quite as powerful. So that was kind of just the purpose of that. And then yeah, so then the next thing I have here is just this rim shot. It's pretty straightforward. It's just kind of in there. I'll play this with the kick as well so you can kind of hear how it fits into the groove. So yeah, pretty straightforward, just like a nice kind of rim shot sound. And then I put it through this ping pong delay to give it some groove. So then after that, another little percussion layer. I just have this little snare. It's pretty straightforward. It's just this snare sample. And then I pitched it up a bit in here. So yeah, you can see I put it on F instead of C, which would be the original pitch. And that just, you know, kind of serves to add a little bit of extra percussion, similar to the way that the rim shot does. So then the last layer of drums I have here is just a little clap. Pretty straightforward as well. What I will say with this though is it's more about like trying to find this style of clap, like these softer, sort of more organic sounding claps. For Denis' style, like I recommend these definitely. Like just spend some time and try to find these kind of claps because they really sound good and they really work if you're trying to do this style of music. So then, like I said, there is a bit of processing on this group, which I have named the drum bus. Basically, I have a bit of OTT on there, which may not seem like much, especially because I was kind of hyping it up before, but this is actually doing quite a bit. If you listen to it without, and then with it, you can hear it gives everything that sort of like metallic, kind of like just very sharp sound that a lot of Denis Sulta's drums sound like. Like I was saying with the hi-hats, like you're trying to get that vibe. This is like sort of solidifying it. Like if you listen to the hi-hats with and without this, you can hear it really makes a huge difference because essentially what this OTT is, if you don't know, it is a famous preset for Ableton's multiband dynamics. It's right under there. And what it does is it stands for over the top. And what it's doing is, if you know, like compression essentially brings the peaks and then like the smaller parts of a waveform closer together. Well, what this is doing is exactly that, but like on a more kind of like multiband scale, I guess. Like it's essentially taking every little frequency that's in there that isn't as loud as like the main ones and it's pulling those up. So what this means here is if you listen without the OTT, it sounds kind of dull and dry and not as, like I said, like metallic and sharp. And that's really mostly because of the frequencies that are most prevalent. But when we add the OTT and it's bringing all those other ones back up, then we get that kind of like blown out metallic sound. Now, the key to using OTT is the amount, because if I just put this on, like when you just put OTT on by default, if I do it here, the amount's at 100%. And although that sounds kind of cool, it's not really usable. So you have to play around with the amount and just turn it down to where it's like sort of workable. Now, another thing that this is doing is it is compressing all of the drums, which isn't always good, but in small amounts can be good, because if you listen, like those percussion sounds, like the little rim shot and the snare, are kind of, especially like the echoes on that little rim shot, are kind of like all getting glued together by this compression. Like, it does kind of help in that sense, like with just sort of gluing all the drums together and putting everything in its proper place, like making the kick really stand out and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much it for this video. Like I said, the main things to think about are like the cool little synth lines, the warm bass sounds, and then like the drums. Just trying to make them have that right, like kind of metallic, deeper texture. So that's gonna be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Check out my social media, which is on the screen right now. You can also get the project file and samples from this video in the description. And yeah, thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.